Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. And also, we bring you that information from people all around the world, which is very exciting because today my guest is Diane Budd. She's a sought-after animal communicator and healer, serving to bridge the gap in understanding between animals and their human companions. In her book, Energy Medicine for Animals, she investigates bioenergetics of animal healing. Diane completed Zoopharmacognosy through the Ingraham Academy in the UK and teaches workshops on animal communication, animal healing, and zoopharmacognosy. She offers private consultations, and you can find her at healinganimals.co.za. So thank you so much for joining us today, Diane, from such a distance.
Only a pleasure and lovely to be here.
Now, what is .co.za? Where are you?
That is South Africa. So .co and Zeda Africa, so South Africa.
Oh, okay. So that is quite a distance. But, we know...
And I'm in Cape Town.
Excuse me?
Sorry, I'm in Cape Town.
Oh, okay. Very good. That's the exact city, which people have heard of. I guess that's a fairly major city in South Africa. Now, let's talk about energy medicine for animals, because your book is widely available and people can get that anywhere.
Yes, it is. It's 9 bookshops, and it's available online through a variety of different resources like Barnes & Noble and Indie House and Amazon, etc.
Yeah, so it's widely available. Now, what made you want to write a book on energy medicine for animals?
Well, it started off because I kept getting information and then I wanted to expand on the information that I was getting. So I wanted to do a little bit more research and find out, if other people had picked up or documented things that I was interested in. And I couldn't find anything. There was absolutely nothing available. And it became quite frustrating to me. And then after a period of time, I thought, well, if it's not available and I'm one of the people who would like it, then I'm sure other people would like it. So why don't I start researching and begin documenting and see if I can make some sense of it all. And I'm extremely glad that I did, because it explains so much, and I'm sure that it will help a lot of people understand, what happens when we connect to our animals, what happens when we embrace them. There's all kinds of an energetic interplay that people with the naked eye can't see that happens on a psychic level. So one day we'll be able to see that.
What do you mean by that? One day we'll be able to see that? Just anyone will be able to see energy fields?
I think I started teaching about 10 years ago, and the classes that I'm now teaching, I find that the students are definitely a little bit more developed, and they're a lot more intuitive. So from interactions, I'm almost led to believe that we've changed, and obviously we grow as a human race, and I think that a lot of more people are becoming switched on. So I think there'll be, in about 10 years' time, we'll be seeing energy, and we'll be seeing energy flowing through people and things, and a lot more people will be able to do that, yes.
And actually, you're certainly not the only one who's ever explained seeing that. If we even look at artwork, like ancient artwork, we see something that might be now described as an aura or a light that surrounds someone that actually many, many people throughout history have claimed to be able to see. We see that often in Catholicism with saints, and in Buddhist information, and in Hindu information, and in Judaism as well. They talk about seeing lights around people or burning bushes and things like that.
Correct. It's a very interesting field, and I think I hope that I've made it a little bit more practical, because let's face it, when you read mythology and we read the biblical text, things sometimes when they describe things, it's a little bit overwhelming, and it's not quite, we don't quite understand what they're saying. That's why I did so many illustrations in the book, and some of them are in color, so that now, for instance, what a lot of people don't know is a chakra. When you put your hands over it, it moves and it changes shape. It moves all the time. And
well, wait a minute. You're throwing out a term that I understand what you're talking about, but let's define it first, because this is part of energy medicine. What do you mean by a chakra?
A chakra is a meridian, so it's an energy point in our bodies. So we have 114 different energy points, and if you go to somebody like an acupuncturist, he might use some of your meridians, or he might use some of your chakras to insert needles in. He might not tell you that. But if you are doing energy healing, or you will specifically tune into the chakras, and they tell us a lot about what is going on. So they are energy fields that rotate in a certain way. They flow all the time. And then we find them we've got 7 major, what they call majors and minors. 7 majors would be somewhere like over your heart, on top of your head, your third eye, and places like that. I hope that makes sense to people.
And probably people have seen it. They are actually energy fields that are described as something that are connected to the body, sort of as a light field. However, many people can see them, feel them, and by the way, there are a lot of scientifically done experiments now that actually do change the electromagnetic energy, with anyone can relate to. I mean, that's what an EKG and an EEG is. Very often at these very areas that are described as the chakras. And they also connect to glands and organs.
That's right. And, you could almost say they're receiving signals. The way that I have a very simple analogy that I like to give people, because people don't always understand that we're in a very big universe, and we are all integrated and we're all connected. And it's like if you make a bowl of jelly and you add some fruit to that jelly. Those little pieces of fruit are us. And we can't escape the jelly, but we can all connect and speak to each other. So that energy field surrounds all of us, and it surrounds the world as well, and that's, how it keeps us connected. So even though you can't see something, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
This is true, even electricity, as you said. And I'd like to remind you, listeners, that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and today my guest is author Diane Budd, who I would consider as a psychic individual who works a lot with animals, and she has investigated the bioenergetics of animal healing. Her book, Energy Medicine for Animals, is what we're talking about here when we're talking about things like illustration of chakras and other interesting things. Now, what about your personal ability to communicate with animals, Diane? How did you discover that?
I think we've all got that, and I think it's some people are just more aware of it than others. My learning curve was when I've also always been fond of animals and always had a relationship with them. But then I started studying metaphysics, and metaphysics is psychology of the soul. So we learned things like chakras and energy healing and the aura and all those kinds of things. And that just made me far more aware than what I was beforehand. And then I did an animal communication workshop, which really made a lot of things shift for me, and I just found it very natural and very easy. And since that day, I've never looked back, because, as I said, for me, it's quite simple. I go to the gym every day, so it's a muscle. So you learn to do something repetitively. You build that muscle. That's exactly how psychic perception also is. I just chose to do animals, not humans. Humans are a little bit too complicated and not always have the best of intentions. So, yes, I chose animals.
And when you talk to animals, do you notice that there is a different communication pattern if you are communicating with, let's say, a cat versus a dog versus a horse?
Yes. Sometimes I speak about the denseness of an animal. So, number one, I can tell how far advanced the soul is, because that's why we're all here. We're all here to. So, for instance, if you've got an animal who's incredibly spiritual, I'll pick that up. If the animal has an accent, I'll pick that up. Very often I communicate with animals all over the world. And, initially when they first talk, they talk, Chinese, or I've got dogs in San Francisco. So when they're speaking Chinese, then I've got to change and say to them, please just speak cat language. And then we go back to pictures. We don't actually go to words. So animals are quite versatile, but you can definitely hear the different types of voices, if somebody's got a deep voice or a light voice or a high voice. So yes, there's a very much a tangible difference between dogs, cats, lizards. It was on Saturday I did a meerkat, which is a mongoose. And it came out as a much higher frequency or a sound than a horse would. And I had just spoken to a horse. So it actually got me by surprise. It was like, oh, okay. And then I was able to continue.
Oh, well, let's look at that a little bit. A meerkat, because I know there was sort of a special TV show about meerkats. They're more like sort of groundhogs almost, and they stand up on their hind legs.
Yes, that's correct. They stand up. This one is a tame one. He lives in the house. He's got free range.
Oh, he's a pet? I didn't know people could have them as pets.
Yes, they could. I don't know. I don't think... I'm just trying to think of the South African law, and I'm not sure if it's against the law or not. I just know that.
But anyway, someone had one as a pet.
Somebody who helps. I don't want to get anybody into trouble here.
Right.
So it was just somebody who helps to rehabilitate animals, and it's in quite a wild area. And yes, so it lives in the house. It's got, it eats bacon and eggs for breakfast. Rolls up the sheets, chews the duvets, and everybody just loves it to bits. So it's got quite an attitude compared to a wild mongoose that would be living in the wild. It's all me, myself, and I, and look how good I am. But very cute indeed.
So that's interesting, and you noticed that it had sort of a higher frequency. Well, hold that thought, because we're going to take a little break here. And I'd like you to know that you are listening to Herbally Yours right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, and that's in 90.3 WHPC, where you can listen live online at www.ncradio.org or on iHeartRadio, which you can hear all over the world, including in South Africa. So for more information on today's guest or topic, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
If your skin could talk, would you listen?
As your skin, I forgive you. I forgive you for poking and popping me when I broke out at 14. I forgive you for that awful belly ring hole you left in me when you were 15. I forgive you for damaging me before prom, on spring break, and at tanning salons when you were 16, 17, 18. But I'm your skin, and if you continue to tan, I hope you can forgive me. Forgive me when wrinkles begin to show and I start developing age spots. Forgive me if I develop melanoma when you're only 22. So please, I'm asking you to stop. Stop tanning now. Our future depends on it.
Protect your skin from melanoma, the second most common cancer in young women 15 to 29 years old. And protect your future. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
And welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours. And I'd like you to know that you can join me, Ellen Kamai, on ground, which means in person, where we go around and do things together like gather wild edible medicinal plants. We have so many workshops in many areas around the country. And in Long Island, we have some at Restoration Farm in Old Bethpage and at St. Joseph's, where it's a big center, where a conference center actually run by nuns, and they have a wonderful, wonderful CSA, which is Community Supported Agricultural Center, and acres of land, and we'll be doing an herb workshop there. That's in Brentwood with the Brentwood Library. So you can find out all of these things by visiting naturalnurse.com or getting in touch with us through Herbally Yours at WHPC at ncc.edu. Today, our guest is Diane Budd, and she is a sought-after animal communicator and healer, serving to bridge the gap in understanding between animals and their human companions. And her book is Energy Medicine for Animals. Now, Diane, I would say almost everyone who has a companion animal as part of their family, like a dog or cat, has gotten the impression that that animal is communicating with them. And I love the little experiment you say, like, just sit there and think about a leash and see what happens.
Yes, exactly. We're all doing it. We're just not doing it consciously. So animals are receiving all the time. You know, they very often know when we're sad, when we're happy, and people always wonder how that happens. And number one, it's a twofold thing. Number one, they feel it through their heart centers. They know when mom or dad is upset or there's a work issue, and then they try and they pick up on those images. But a lot of people, what they don't realize is that they can actively become more involved with their animals. And I often use the analogy of a television screen. So sometimes if you find your animal sitting in front of you and it's like, what do you want? And then just think of a blank television screen and just go with the first thing that comes onto that television screen, whether it be a walk, whether it be food, whether it be anything. Immediately go up and just give it to the animal. And even if it's not food time, it's just to acknowledge that that animal has sent that message and that the owner has received it. And let the owners have some fun with that as well. So they can very often sit and think of the leash and what it feels like, how happy both parties are when you go out for a walk and the sun on your face and the breeze and other dogs. And I guarantee you that you'll immediately find that your dog will be sitting next to you. So there's very many things that we can begin just to interact more with our animals on a conscious level.
Yeah, I really find that true with cats as well. You know, there's always this big debate about some animals being more intelligent than others. Do you feel there's a difference, or that they just have different styles of communication?
I'll be in trouble with some things. No. For me, it's about consciousness and the way that it's grown. And so for me to explain it is just like, for instance, when we were at school, we've got some people who really battled and couldn't quite grasp what was going on in class. They were the slow learners. And then you got people in the middle who got, D's and C's. They could get stuff and they were pretty fluent, etc., etc. And then you get the kids at the top of the class, and they would be very intelligent. They'd know all the answers. And that's how I find certain, animals is I know how far into cell evolution they got by the type of information that I'm getting. Do they think only of themselves? Do they interact more? Do they want to learn more? Do they think about things? Do they watch interaction between themselves and other people and then apply that knowledge? Let's be honest, some animals are extremely clever. So yes, there is a definite difference between all of the species.
Between the species, and I imagine also between individuals.
Yes, definitely.
Because I have cats, and there's some of them that just figure out everything. They really train their humans well. They can teach you when to open the window and when to shut the door and where to put their, they just tell you what to do. And others are more passive, and they're, more or less happy if you just feed them. So there's a great variety of differences in personality types, but I feel all animals have emotions. Have you found that, Diane? I think it's unbelievable when people say, oh, well, animals can't feel. I mean, you can see them and feel their emotions.
Exactly. I don't understand how anybody can say that, because every single animal that I've ever come across has got a range of emotions. Never mind if it's a grasshopper who continually just wants to eat and jump from place to place or from grass to grass, or to a cow standing in a field. Everybody, all of us, humans and animals, have emotions, and emotions are incredibly strong. And, when we say that the energy field, our auras, or the energy in us, has actually been measured, and we have 7 different layers. And our final layer, when they measured it, it worked out to 2,000 megahertz. Now, when I looked at that, I realized that a light bulb is 50 megahertz. So the intensity of emotions has to travel through the fields. Okay, so that shows you how strong emotions are, because it has to vibrate at a certain frequency. So they're not, they know everything, and that's why it's very difficult to hide anything from an animal, because they feel first and then they think.
Yeah, we often see that, and I want to remind you that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Diane Budd, animal communicator and healer. So, also author of the book, Energy Medicine for Animals. Let's look at somewhat terms here, Diane. For instance, healing. Do you mean getting rid of a disease, or do you mean calming down? What are you referring to when you're actually talking about healing?
Okay, so in your last question, you wanted to know if all animals have emotions. And sometimes I find that in specific cases, an animal has been so damaged that they hide all their emotions and they bury them. And therefore, I've got to try and heal that. I've got to try and make that animal let go of everything that's happened in the past, and hopefully try to accept a new home and move on to, a different level of understanding and interaction. And I use several methods. I use the essential oils. That's where the Zoopharmacognosy comes into it. Or I do energy healing. And I've got to try and activate that field for healing to happen. So sometimes it's a physical condition. An animal has hurt himself, or there's scar tissue, or for any reason. And then sometimes we're dealing with emotions that are buried and things that need to be processed. So I often find a lot of animals get taken away from mom too soon, And then I would have to work with something like neroli and rose to help them to try and process it and to relieve it. And it's like us. Sometimes we just can't get over something, and we tend to go for therapy. And we all know that sometimes if you're in therapy for years and years, it takes a long time to come right. Well, with animals, sometimes it works a little bit quicker, and that's why I really, when I stumbled onto the essential oils, it just made things so much easier because I can feel things on my body. So when I'm working with an animal and I'm offering essential oils, I can feel the shift, and I can feel the healing, and then I can carry on to the next thing.
Well, I'm happy you brought up essential oils because certainly they can be used in healing. But I know with animals in particular, I don't think that should be where a new person starts, because there are essential oils that may be wonderful for humans and quite deadly for animals.
That is correct. Nobody should offer animals essential oils if you don't have the background and you don't understand what you're offering. You know, there's been 1 or 2 fatalities that have unfortunately occurred, and that has been by accident. So in one particular case, a cat was bumped over a burner with some cinnamon oil in it, and the oil unfortunately went onto the skin, and the cat licked itself clean, as cats do. And unfortunately, the cat then passed away 3 days later. So if an accident like that does happen, please just wash it off with milk. And it's just a warning for all people, because I find that the latest trend at the moment is to have these air humidifiers, and that people are buying off Wish and Amazon. And the type of essential oils that comes with those humidifiers and air fires, or whatever you call them, is synthetic. It's not good essential oils, and it really isn't a good thing to try and keep your animal inside and burn, have those things going on, because it is toxic to that animal.
Yes, they can be. So that's the warning. In other words, do something like get your book, Energy Medicine for Animals, and there's so much more to learn there, like bioenergetics of animal healing and Zoopharmacognosy, which unfortunately we're not going to have time to go into, but just so people do know that there's all that interesting information there, and that you will actually share information about the right way to do something, like look at what's going on with the correct thing to use for your particular animal, and how to gently communicate and tune in and honor what's going on anyway, where you're feeling like, your dog is telling you that they need to go out, or that they like a particular chair to sit on. Really simple things. You can always start with that, which is a really good place to start.
Yes, in the back of the book, I think I've devoted an entire chapter to it. It's a step-by-step process of how to connect to an animal. There's also questions that you can ask, because some people say that it's just a dog or it's just a cat. What on earth could I want to know? So I've actually given people questions that they could ask. So it makes the whole process a little bit easier.
Yes, very much so. So I want to thank you so much for being our guest today right here on Herbally Yours. And tell us the best way for people to find you, Diane.
Sure. The best way is just through the internet or through my website, and the address is www.healinganimals.co.za.
Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another edition of Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours.